Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you all so much for being here. Happy solstice. So thank you for spending part of this incredibly long evening with us. Really excited to welcome Roberto Harrison, Cody-Rose Clevidence, and Nicholas Gulig. Nikki Gulig. Maybe that'll stick. So this is the final event of the year here, so we're ending on a real high note, not like all the other ones. No, just kidding. 2024 has been amazing. This reading will, I'm sure, be amazing. Thanks to all of you who've been here with us as presenting artists, as audience, who's supported, and so on, and out there. So since this is the last event of the year, there aren't that many announcements, mercifully, for you, other than to say that I hope you join us in the new year at our poetry marathon. January 25th and 26th at St. Kate, the Arts Hotel downtown. 12 hours each day, those 2 days, well over 200 presenting artists in all. And tickets are on sale now. It should be an incredible time. There's going to be, of course, poetry, but also film screenings, some episodes of the wonderful surrealist cooking show based here in Milwaukee, Milwaukee Kitchen, food, and of course, amazing company. So, yes, St. Kate, the Arts Hotel, 25th and 26th of January. Tickets on sale now. And then just to say also that we, all three poets reading this evening are celebrating recent books, which is exciting. So we have Isthmus to Abya Yala by Roberto Harrison, The Grimace of Eden Now by Cody-Rose Clevidence, and The Other Altar by Nicholas Gulig, not Nikki Gulig. And those are out there in the bookstore, so get, a couple of copies. There's like a holiday of some kind coming up that might be a nice occasion to treat your friends. Okay, so that's all for me. In fact, this will be all, because I'm going to provide an introduction to the whole crew now, and then just let her rip, let the poetry go, and then see you on the other side, So as spending time with all three of these books kind of at the same time, some patterns emerged. Maybe it's a stretch, or maybe it's just my own mind. But in Roberto Harrison's Isthmus to Abya Yala, there's a mythopoesis of seemingly continual entries and crossings and openings. Poetry with the circuitous momentum of, to borrow from an earlier book of Harrison's, quote, an endless line of arrival. Harrison imagines the plural consciousness of a nation as being time from Dogen, who's referenced several times in the book, quote, each moment is all being, is the entire world. I feel like Harrison's poetry is alive in that simultaneity. And akin to this, I think, is Cody-Rose Clevidence's, quote, catalog of human sorrows, loves, plates and bowls and embedded projectiles, a frequent listing that articulates a certain convergence and infinitude beyond comprehension, the numeration and enumeration of overlaid worlds, excavation of sedimentary layers, quote, what raw materials do you stand on? All roiling in constant compost, all transmuted atoms, quote, there is no cease to exist. And from Nicholas Gulig's The Other Altar, I think of the poem Amatidia, which there's a beautiful broadside of on in the front room, which shares its name with the units that comprise the compound eyes of some insects, namely in that poem of bees. And I think of the simultaneity of the compound eye and its double sense of our compound sights and selves, not always reliable, quote, false dominion of the eye, but a varied and attentive sense of encounter, waking in the ruins of the book, that's a quote. And as they face the xenophobic weight of this crisis empire, all three poets do find something in a sense of convergence in a varied and concomitant fields of page, self, and world. This is from Nicholas Gulig, the inscape of utterance to, quote, the restless violence of the margins. All three find sense beyond mere meaning where, quote, the world remains adrift beyond the edge of speech, or I think maybe what Dan Beachy Quick says of the Grimace of Eden now might equally well apply to all three poets reading this evening. Quote, "The music of a poem is its own higher intelligence and does more work in us than mere meaning can ever do." Please welcome in this order, Roberto Harrison, Nicholas Gulig, Cody-Rose Clevidence. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Nicholas, for inviting me to read with you guys. I have deep admiration for both of you. Color Network Aviation Origins. Flying, we remain inside the tomb of ancient problems, the news that we become to say we are. In everything, the dust does not report us to the places where we might remain to set ourselves above the night. Inside the night together as we see it move through others, we begin with woven straw through animal intentions, that the sea in us might know without a word, without a face, and each of the remainders that the dust intends for us, wearing other countries as the answer to the flight, along with everything we do not know and do not harbor. In our segmentation, the promises that we were given, a stake, an ambulance, a radiant fall in which the mind must stop within, but in the hands and the roads that we now wander in the morning, we see ourselves as others are not known at all to light or to the darkness, where we move and where we are this morning. The veins of freedom that cut into us with ships arriving to endure and to replace the landing with the words that stop our motions in assault in the evening that collapses, where another time and other ways are known and do not wander without answer, or the question is not offered. Blank away the silence as we face the traces of our endings and the bodies that refuse to be the color number we belong with. Long ago, in other floods and other networks that remain to place the origins of languages and something that the season pulses to intend and to belong without a breath. But the knife I see in every moment does not place us in the streams that we endure to find each other, and the blood outside the war. Every laughter, every tear remains together for oblivion. Our necks in ropes without a door to follow signs with. In the salt compiler, we support and we arrive to make a body everywhere tonight. Our sleep must be the answer that we know, to follow in the places we intend to understand. But each of us is cut with knives in our endurance, the doubt that makes us fall beside each road that lies toward the interior, where others must not place us in the wires that do not stay. Keep us there and keep us night again, as we return to serve and to amend ourselves in everything, as we now know it, to receive and to endure without a face. All our limbs have served us well beyond the peace that does not know us. All the deer have wandered out of segmentation to resume and to abolish every screen. But these are not the confrontations of our messages. These are not the only ways that memory could speak to us and through the nights that we endure to make a savage allegation in the winter promise of a news beside ourselves. Where we are and where we go is not the only time that number finds us to reveal our news to the alone. The taper has remained together for our only night in the abundance of collapse and the revealment of our simply elevated carnage. We did not remain outside the time because the strands do not connect us to follow questions. We are known to be the negligence of reason as we falter to find other ways to see. The brain must not be central. Everything is consciousness as we awaken to the war of revelation and resilience as our color star returns. So this is called Higher Intuitive Ethnomathematics, after Catherine Christer Hennigs and I'm not sure how to say his name, Ubidatan D'Ambrosio. Catherine Christer Hennigs is a great musician, composer, poet, philosopher, mathematician. She came up with something called Higher Intuitive Mathematics, and I studied mathematics, but I failed in my pursuit of it. But she is amazing in what she does. And so there's another person from Brazil, Uburiatan de Ambrosio, who came up with a term, ethnomathematics. And I initially went into mathematics because I thought that there was a place where maybe psychology and ethnicity didn't matter so much. And so he kind of turned that around. So this is higher intuitive ethnomathematics. A cross of purposes dissolves to withstand the matrimony of the dust to the rotten water. Perfect spheres in the signs of eclipse, where we wander to find who has keys in the seas of electricity. To remember and replace ourselves for graphs, the sun must make outside of networks, of the ashes close inside. But the symbol does not carry there for family and patterns. They do not display or wander in the night. Without an animal to find that we have left the lives of every color to adorn the nest of shattered eagles. In these we must equip the sun to follow everything in numbers as we make the languages in dirt that rise, to make a memory of constellation in the fuse that matters more than any flyer at the bottom of the asteroids arriving now without geometry. In ethnomathematics, we discover that every seal remains to pick the most of tatters everywhere. We know that shapes intend the music, and the service that savannas make to move and share to be the same as flowers for the fire. In every link, we must replace the answer with the other questions. We line up to break through borders in the blood that does not clot. And every morning, we are formed to be the body. We become in separate systematic allocations of the nerves inside the places, wearing out the momentary night and through the ice. That we must feel to follow with a warmth the languages aspire within. But the inside of the forest must not be the answer that we know, to feel the memories of things in each of our returns, where others might not find us to believe and to endure, more than numbers replace the faces with the light as morning comes to be, but to cast for everything about us as we wander through the fields and the returns of shadows as they move and do not land within us to remain as conversation in the depths of shame evolving into joy, and shattered creases in perfection, but not even-tempered animals we do not know. This does not compute or follow other times or numbers. It remains a symbol's patch for layers of removal in the rain as we do not expire, to wear away the fields and showers that endure, to make an answer of the body, laid for memory, to form in sand the crossing of the oceans, as we must reply. But there was hard replacement in the color box of sorrow, and the numbers were returned to with ethnicity and circuses, settled into magic fires and promises that do not stand with faces turned. In each of our deliveries, we wander through the night. In each of our receptions, we endure the answers to become and share the climate as an offering, newly formed arrangements of the mind. For the kids now have it in their shoes, the matrimony of the earth with night, in spirals and in caves we do not see, around and placing our solutions with a goal of jungles made to hold us. Newly patterned animals escape and make the paths again we follow into for our simple case of nullity. In the rambling stillness of intention, silence makes what we endure. So 40 years ago, I went to grad school for Bath, and it was a disaster. I was completely unprepared. I knew I didn't want to get a job. I had to figure out something for my life. And in my first year, I made good friends with people that turned me on to all kinds of books. And so I was reading Henry Miller and the Beats and Blaise Cendrars and looking at art, Arthur Dove and Basquiat and Arshila Gorky, Stuart Davis. And I decided to drop out of society for a year. So I traveled for a year with very little money. I put 15,000 miles on my sky blue Plymouth Duster that I bought for $500. And I made a lemon skate around the country with Bloomington at the center, and I went up to the East Coast and back down. I started off in the Navajo Reservation with a friend who was studying philosophy. and we went down into Mexico and across the tip of the Baja and up to San Francisco. And he went back to the UK where he was from, and I went up to Oregon where I was born. I went to Washington, I went to British Columbia, and drove back. And my car died eventually after about 6 months. Then I went to Europe, and I got to Morocco. I went to the Atlas Mountains. I had a great adventure. And so this year I traveled in an ancient way. I just slept in my car and I slept in my tent. And so I wandered the earth in an ancient way. But all those regrets are what? What are they? What do they keep me from? What is it that I do not love? Choice has to do with it. How each one has made us a sprout of the end. I mean that others are not there. They are not to be suspended beyond it. Where it is where it was. There's no difference. But I stand up and I see that I slept again without the world, without anything to wrap up the symbolism that I found in the back, in the afterimage of the starlight that she made beyond my own need to suffer. But I see, if I ever saw anything, it has turned into a blank now in the interior of the screen. I never knew anything but the interior. That's why I regret that I know nothing but that I am all of it, and it is gone, that I never walked the other way inside the things that adorn my entrance to the sea. Have I lost the abundance that makes the plains? Have I lost it in the ever after that I knew not where I would be in that moment? I know about it from wandering a long time ago, when I wandered the earth in an ancient way, and that I knew the night became me then, that I had been the 3 and I had been the 4, but now I have become the 7, and it is time for me to make it 1. Negligent start. What do I do now? The satellites have gone on to the shore. The skeletal remains I have seen nowhere. Now the sea is gone, and I am without time in my hands. I have nowhere to see otherwise, but the explosions do not remain in my basket. I do not remember what electricity came to gather my absence. From the door that I travel through to talk and to simply live. And the otherwise gone has seen it there. Now that I remember, what new planet might make me live in the extension of nowhere? The remaining aircraft get together in groups and portray that I have remembered correctly what new frame must make them move through seasons as if there will be fall. In the other motors I remain mobile, but not in time and not in harvest, that the possible body of response must become in the awful tables of our memories, the consumable conversations that we have made that have made us move toward the equator and find that I have more to give silence. But death becomes me, and I now remain without arbor. And I have stood upon my own graves, that the symbol might collect to salvage the count, and a ring to be there where someone moves and stands among the only places that we see. The animals came to me, and I removed myself from the planet in response. And now I am here, above nothing, placed in the shadows of the core of the earth before I become more grounded. But there were so many executions of sanity in my mind. I moved along without porpoises, and I see that my material was wrong, that it folded in the wrong direction and became both legible and illegible. There was nothing I could do in those days. I was worn without color, and my eyes closed within the shadows of each face I encountered. My story was purposeless, but no one knew that I once had an entrance, that I once became the reception for every negation. My doorways and welcome mats were gathered from history, and I had seen to it that I would turn inside without answer and without origin. But it was lost to assume that my contents were set, that I had relayed my own birth into the sequence of compilers, forced to face the skulls in every forehead. The pretty faces, too, were there. They called me many years later and asked me to listen to their abandonments. They asked me to trace their travels so that I would see that someone remains here in the blanket city, smoothing my ears for the future of sound. They went in so many different directions. Each gave me a packet of departure, signed in the outlines of love. They had asked for respect for the moment. They knew joy would follow within them, and that someday I would know that they would be near me in invisibility. And I talked to them there, in the presence. They assumed my motives, but I had none. They thought I would strangle in reception of their accomplishments, and that I would see the lights burn. Once I returned, my body became multiple in self-negation, as my greetings were too severe for the silence. But each word in my mind had transformed into tarry roots that I could not discover, not in my own self or in others. Eventually, I paused and spoke to an angel of crime, and we considered what it would be to speak again, as if every vacancy had been filled. But in the stables of disorder, I was not a disciple of others, and we could not summarize anything for the registers. I thought we had numbers, but we did not. I thought my face was connected to others, but I had only my key, and the freedom that it gave morning cost me the body of night. There were multiple saviors competing to death, and I remained in the tunnels that we named ourselves. Our belongings were removed by the noisy carts, and I stumbled to find a response in the blood on my lips. The visitors thought that evaporated kindness would reveal itself in my absence, that I would turn and find my own self abandoned, and that I would harvest this negligence and grow to be despised by an angel of intermediacy. But the darkness was my own contemplation. I knew everything as disease. I sought others for the medicine of return, but I never spoke. And then my mind burst with discovery in the portions of my history that I have nothing for. And my history was tested by inclusion, but it was an inclusion of means and power that I had no dial to extend. And so I remembered again what the letter was, and I spoke, and I was received by the phone and by the screen. And then I remembered that all of us know at least one simple greeting, and that we are being pulled to the exit in the skies that has abandoned the earth. I thought there was goodness, but it was just a book. There were just steps to a book behind everything. And now that the fight is over, I see that these people do not see the doors that I carve from animal communications, that the number is wrong in their phones, and that I am without sender, that my computers have gone to the past and delivered my absence there, to be collected by wandering, and that nothing moves me now to become. But that isn't everything. When I move through the field, I see objects, and when I reach for these objects, as if I was speaking again, they are not accessible. They have no password. I have no keyboard in that world, and so I have only the fire that I course through my spine again. My fingers separate sparks, and I am left alone to be with others. Roads and roads of coagulated blood and pus guide me there to face them again, as if we were friends. Everything I see is crossed by two carcasses. My mind is in time for the answer, and I know it. I have blood in my brain, and I see it. The murders surrounding me extend far into the other worlds without me. I confront them, and I see that I have begun to speak without the season of death in my mind. It's not as if I ignore it, but the weight of my absence carries nothing, and I know that the sea has grown within me to outlast my services, to become again in the kindness that I destroy for the snakes, to swim to the sand and hold water. A sketch of a new kind of person. In another body, there is light, where there is not a person falling for the newly old. It burns each tongue for equal action in the middle segment of the world. The net of my intentions falls to find another body for the forest, for the computer tomb outside the jungle shape I know is here to be myself in other beings. I run to capture symbol time as framed without and slowly empty, reading lights, and now I move together once again and twice again before the circle of tomorrow. The animals are the true martyrs and saints. We chose not to be the animal, but it is the animal that is chosen, not us, after all. So here I use relationship as two words like Tom Rayworth, but it's not really related to Tom Rayworth work. My purpose is my container. What is a night in my word? The relationship cuts the horizon of my inarticulate body, realigned through unitary dismemberment. The sun speaks through the lake. The moon, the sounds, the waves are marks of infinity. A wilderness before words become no one here, no exit for the indivisible life. To write now as I become broad daylight, through the punctuations of the night's densities, destined to remain in the stolen ground of adjacent minds. Shadow puppet, call me when you find the answer to disaster. Leave a message for the ferns that I am now. This is a poem for Elias Ignacio Sepulveda, a friend, really good poet. I haven't heard from him since September. I don't know if he's dead or alive or in Mexico or Milwaukee. Travel through the screen for Elias. A friend of interior darkness traces the turtle shell pattern. We return to mark the screen between us to the loss of our bodiless tongues. Where must I call now that we do not see? I return to the night. How do I see among the disappearing birds? Our windows portray the sun without earth. A long time ago, I swam through computers to the earthly islands. But now the snowflakes in a distant space beyond melt and become icebergs. Observers through the glass cannot arrive. They shrink with the light. Now my symbols do not share themselves with the world, and I awaken through music, opposed to transactional ways. A family plan sprouted through a failure of belonging, fades the morning. Inside the hidden, impossible depths of the page, I speak, and I do not speak. I choose, and I do not choose. Thank you.
I'm going to start with a poem called West Wind. West Wind. Hold on. I did this last time. I forgot to check what time I started, so then when I was checking later, it didn't matter because I didn't know what time I started. So 7:40. Okay. West Wind. Ancient in my asking, blue truths circumnavigate the dairy state. Maybe I'm dumb enough to sing. As a long fall descends upon the continent, a new emergency erupts within the taut interiors of white men. Just yesterday I watched a blue jay peck apart an egg. Maybe the thin veneer of reason isn't the firm stone ground it used to stand upon. I am filled with questions for the dead. How is it, for example, that local birds do not erupt in flame each time their call notes vanish in the city's thickness? are the 2 black rocks I threw into the river, demanding violence to the president worth going in to save. Just yesterday, I watched my lawn turn brilliant within a silver arc of water erupting upward from a plastic Walmart sprinkler. I called my mother and I told her that I loved her. A rainbow etched itself in air. Maybe when I'm older, I'll stop imagining the policemen all have names and walk alone for once into the shuddering despair of the second half of an existence. I no longer check my bank account. The truth is, I know I'll never leave the incoherent structure of a history, never draw my form around my form in chalk, or step beyond the limits of a language. In my left hand, blue shells turn to shitty narratives. This sky is not the sky I learned about in song. Let's do this one. It's called Dream Song of the Young Conductor. Despite the night's resplendent radio, its end does not accept me. Left to my devices, I turn on from far away the fragrant distance of its music nonetheless, albeit beautiful, the way the moment after orchestras arranges strange applause approaches an appropriate disfigurement. Tonight, as I prepare to let my thinking ring, the hands of men grow tired at the freshly laundered edges of their sleeves. Though no one leaves themselves across the common dark, the theater fills until it doesn't. My eyes descend upon the banisters. What is it that brings the masses to these noises? Without them, I'm one of them. I trust myself too much to love another maker, and must make do without a language leaning through me like a history. Soon I'll stand in silver isolation on a stage, the world in which it's difficult to care does not forgive me, my half-face twisted to a grin each time another's voice protects my name by saying it. And so I say again to all the gentlemen in nightcoats, the dusky ladies straightening their gloves, welcome, this evening it is my honor. And then I raise my arms. My coattails stretch and lengthen like the news. Its nearest region, loitering, I fear, is never music, although I listen when I'm hungry, when I'm home. Just yesterday, for example, in a place where I have never been, except within the wooden crawl of a viola, a young man lit himself on fire, hoping in the almost perfect presence of an end, despite the rain he feared was coming, that it wouldn't. Let's do this one. This is a poem for my wife. It's called Border Work. Border Work. Our being here together is the night-struck violet plucked from an edge-blue curve of air. The light does not absolve us. Because we named our children in the margins of a garden's darkness, the white rose listens. I love the thousand shades of you. Every morning, our daughters sleep beyond themselves in dayglow. The house grows quiet in their wake. To the place where you should be, I lash the ache of every brightness I've disfigured, the years that we have left. Bury with me the bottom half of fence posts in the yard. Pack the loose dirt harder. These days, I'm beginning to believe that I belong here. Because we chose to raise our children in the center of an empire, the low glass glistens in the west wind. At night, the sky edge finds us staring at our hands. It is easy to forget we left a world for this one. Literary criticism. For the Book of Smoke was done with me, for I hadn't finished reading, nor had I tracked the crooked path by which I came to recognize myself. Among the strange cacophony of colony, make no mistake, the map I've kept no longer guides me through my narratives. For outside, a lone magnolia disappears into the shadow of a better tree, and America collapses. How is one to navigate the dark inertia of their suffering? Among the many predicates for dawn, my father is a ghost bone carried in a dog jaw. For I am not myself, nor am I starting over among the dumb assumption the dark is not the dark I read about. For what is love except a blood star rising nightly? What is light except the distant thrum of hovering? We're thinking like 15 minutes? Yeah, okay. End of April. A blue hallucination, the rain tonight upon the shed roof spells a new vocabulary. Everywhere the young are restless in their dark encampments, performing the important artwork of the heart. It grows difficult to feel alive. The police are gathering. The dead in Palestine are gathering. And so the far-off voices of the living organize in ardent harmony across the lost semester of the night. What are we who teach them learning? I'm trying to remember. Gaza is a book. Dream song of the artist as an autumn night. Read as a tradition the leaves did not transgress, were not what I imagined being in the autumn of her song. Still I felt their weight appreciate. From them I made a world, a living sculpture framed by arc and ache and agony. Forgive me. Thinking I had every right, my language turned an untuned circle in the air. The circle burned, clouds became their images. In an unkept corner of the sky, an inscape changed by smoke accumulated. Terrified, I traced the smoke's unfinished thickening across the canopy, the death-felled letters of the leaves, whatever color or cliché is spilt, vocabulary scattered. Everywhere around me, a trace of gray I asked across the field above me. My breath began again beyond the scope of symmetry, a dark conglomerate of stars. What is left to constellate? But for the vagrant company of making, I made alone each far-off fleck of light, a self surrounded by its progeny, wept and was delivered inward. I taught myself to pray. A little God I spelled without an alphabet appeared, approaching dignity and lacking definition. In her I learned the names of others. They, like me, were lonely, naked, enraged by our arrangement. Startled, staring out, we screamed and were replaced. Our scream became me, almost orderly. The night the stars announced their dominance, a narrative in which a pure amount of mourning, a memory erased, arose and rendered equally the night I quelled within myself and verified. I was so villainous. I loved myself too much. There, without philosophy, I screamed again and felt a distant singing fall beyond the able tenor of my reach, illuminating nothing. A new darkness swarmed within me. I was impressed. From where I stood, a man no more among the pitch and stretch of shadows patterning the path's unsteady margins, I heard myself, a record overturned within the ruins of an artwork, speaking. The wind, what was it, wilting? It was western, so I left it. The leaves, they too arose and fell away from me in drifts. They startled everything. The stars burned red within their architecture. Let's do a couple more here. Do a long one, then maybe one or two short ones. This is called Book of Difference. To write the book a second time, I shoot it. When my father dies, I leave the room and stand alone at the end of a long hall, looking down on Minnesota. I know of no other happiness, writes Oppen, but the mind rising into what is there. It's summer in the Middle West, and 10 are dead in Buffalo. I call a friend and weep into the telephone. A field of knee-high grass surrounds me. I lay the book against a tree stump. Confronted by police, the shooter removes his armor in a fluid motion close to Grace. The hall is empty. He sets his weapon briefly against his chin and then surrenders. The switchgrass sways. Every time I stare along the rifle's spine and pull the trigger, buckshot scatters in the bright light. The pages separate. The book begins to pull itself apart. In the racist theory of replacement, men like me, women like my wife, children like my children stand to disenfranchise white men. For Oppen, the failure of language to be transparent is a failure to move beyond the shipwreck of the singular, a falling short of love. I used to think there was no one I loved the way I loved my dad, but then I had a daughter. At night, I light a candle and tell his ghost I'm sorry. The echo of a gunshot slants against the hills. The book begins to blossom. Although his actions resonate beyond the single moment of their occurrence, rippling outward, the bullets proving that the borders of the self are porous, the shooter is alone. When my sister calls to tell me I need to make it home, I'm poor and living in a small apartment half a world away in Thailand. When I put the phone against my chest and hold it, I turn to the woman who is now my wife, and the room begins to shrink itself around a silence the likes of which I know today my children will also have to someday navigate without me. In Jean Raspail's 1973 novel, The Camp of the Saints, brown immigrants band together to overrun the continent. My daughters scream each other's names and sprint across the yard. The weapon heavy in my hands, the book unfurling outward. I haven't written since I've had kids, so when a girl I used to think I'd marry suggests we work together on a project, I'm afraid. In my memory, I set the rifle down and lay alone beside the book and let the light across my face go forth without the need to name it. For you and of you, I begin. I'm growing in the cold stone, a garden in my basement, and then the poem falls out of me like water. When my youngest daughter reaches for the picture of my dad I keep on a shelf above my record, she asks what it means to die. The poem prescribes itself its ending, a silent litany of grief. My daughter pauses. Death, I say, is when a person turns just small enough to climb alone into the hearts of those they've left behind and live there. It is a place, Oppen writes. Nothing has entered it, nothing is left. The depth of water pours from all its sources. My earliest memory is of a dream in which my father disappears into a painting of a ring of children holding hands that used to decorate my bedroom. In it, I'm alone and screaming out his name. But when I wake, the scream remains, but this time he's sitting in the room beside me and saying it's okay. Everything will be okay. Strangely, some 30-odd years later, these same words promising my safety are the last I hear him speak. I cannot, even now, altogether disengage myself, Oppen writes. I pick the book up off the ground and carry it. As versions of white replacement theory over on the continent, my daughter climbs into my lap, puts her head against my chest, and says, my dad's awake in there and wants to know if he can visit us in summer. When I can't write a poem, I feel alone in a world of corporations, standing in a hall of endings, listening. The names of the dead according to their faces blur into the general onslaught of the news and disappear. I, too, like you, am guilty of forgetting. In the passing of the great race, Madison Grant posits that genetic dissolution will cause the West to fall. Every night, my daughter puts her face against my cheek and whispers in my ear. Rome begins to burn a second time, the ghost of Athens, all of Alexandria. The book is lighter now and larger. Because my dad will never meet my kids, I'm trying to remember him when he was young. But the older that I get, the more the form I apprehend appears increasingly transparent, his language failing him a day before his body does. I want to live forever, so that my kids will never need to write a poem like this, but so does everyone, I think, and so my hope is dumb. My daughter kisses me, and I promise silently inside myself that I'll remember the weight her face exerts against my own, the quiet pressure of her mouth, a kind of music moving through me, blooming. In the garden of my memory, I guard the growing darkness of my grave and drag a branch across the wild grass and sing. My singing ceases. In the room my father is growing smaller in, I read to him until my shoulder slumps against his deathbed. I have not, and never did, have any motive but to achieve clarity, writes Oppen. My children sleeping in the other room appear to me the reason there is light. The absolute singular, the unearthly bonds of the singular. When he met my mother, I wonder if my dad imagined me. If at some point, and only for a moment, I existed long before my body did. A single candle flickers near a picture of my father on an altar. The book I shot is now alive in this book. The light of the pages packed against each other exposes the new day. And we'll do one more. Let's make it short. Postscript. Opening the book and closing it, the word dissolves in lake death. We have let it come to that, to this particular insistence, the shawl's transparent winter, the long dark braid gone down across your shoulder when the dress drops. The word dissolves in messages like might it not be necessary to drown our hands in morning milk. Too many night birds cancering the day air. We go so easily into the hospitals of evening. Love, a radiant cacophony. To withstand the autumn wait, the easy, pretty country. Waking up in what cannot. We make, when pressed into a lessening belief, a greater lessening. The world beyond the word in hindsight. Wouldn't that be violent also. To follow you, one would have to shadow out the self, construct a narrow path of gravel through into the anti-sky, its error like a working spark. Would that I could give the violent weather of my lungs to shake apart your form within the after-presence's aporia, in which is not, beneath the quivering intensities. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Woodland Pattern, for having us, and thank you, Roberto and Nikki, for being here with me, and also thank you, everyone, for coming. I've been really realizing something on this trip, which is that I live and move like most people in sort of multiple communities, which I love and which I think is good for the soul. And a community that I get to rarely be around is this one of the sort of cult of the book. And it feels like a home to me, and also, so a special thank you to everyone here and also everyone in the world sort of holding open this realm of like readers and thinkers and writers, sort of for everyone that needs it, that can find it. It feels really important to me. So I'm going to read just 3 poems from this book that just came out, The Grimace of Eden Now. When I was writing it, I was on a super maximalist kick. I am not anymore. So I look at it and I'm like, God, there's so many fucking words in there. Like, so I'm just going to read a couple from that, and then some shorter work from this project that I've been working on for the last like two or 3 years. I've been reading a lot of ancient Chinese, ancient Japanese work, the sort of clarity, the simplicity, and then I discovered Ammons, which is good for me. And so I thought I was reading this book that was just sort of about like crystalline observances of what's happening today. And then about 4 months ago, my partner died really suddenly. And I probably won't cry, but if I cry, I just want you to know it's okay. That's a normal thing. That's a normal reaction. And then rereading them, I was like, oh, bitch, those were about figuring out how to love. So they're very simple. I said this last night because it's a good line. I said, I would like to say they're deceptively simple, but I think they're just simple. So they go pretty quick, so don't be daunted by the amount of pages. They're quite short. So I'm going to read 3 from the Grimace. Forewarning, too many words, and then we'll move right along. Who will be the god of the finches god? Sun muscle, trow, into which we plow our light, heaps of engines, laughter, flight, falling into, over, seasons hoarse. Morning dims us, morning's course, it has its way with us, in blue-green pasture, pleasure, blue-green weather, greener grass and greener feathers, flecked galaxy rusting in the field, the small seeds, the wider yield, wires where the laughter was. Crisis of blue, crisis of cicada blue, lizard brain, talk to me, lizard eye of the world, contracting, widen, lengthen, grow more limbs, spines, touch me not, universe, gargantuan, take it into your vision, biolumin, curse word-laden world of the void, wherein my heart lies, my heart of the greenest grass, ash, or flesh, minaret, spires, my brain, ow, crisis city, crisis lily, crisis empire, built on empire, dipping, dew, toil, soil. Labor is man's metabolism with the world. Show me your lizard, shame, behind your other eye, luminous, big, and golden, flecked, unflinching. Take it in your hands, in both hands. Hold it up to the heavens like a cup. Stupor me, stupor you. Curse me, curse you. Curse this spinning globe and golden eye, and bless it too. The ocean is old, it is made of salt, and so am I, and history too, on this joyful, joyful planet, rolling like a horse in a starry field, a plague on all our horses. You sisters of history, you sons of morning, us sons of bitches, us stallions of mourning. You live your life as if they're all in you still, secreting things, stamping their hooves, warbling, snorting, laying on their sides in the one patch of light like that. Brainstem, the motes of dust in the universe coalesce. My gods, your ancestors, the birds, mercy, a place to rest, in time and in your heart, the world. The void greets us with its characteristic silence, unlike the finches, unlike all this. All eyeballs and odors and noises, generating our own heat from 8 inches of topsoil, the sun and rain and time, bodies of becoming, mortal, time itself. The cracked egg of time won't go back in its shell, yolk sac of sun spilling out over and over, ooze of morning creeping up the mountains, creeping along the pastures and up the gleaming sides of avenues, the hand of a lover, abstract caress, time's endless formation, weaving its geometries through expanding space, man of myself, shell and egg of myself, spill, mortal, coil, oil, foil, boil, raving ocean, strands of time braiding us. Let us loose with our hooves, with our purse of stars, cities, flowers of sadness, night again, little sea anemone beset by stars, Christ, benumbed, unencumbered jellyfish in the heart of the first ocean, climbing up each ray of sun. Come to me each morning, morning sun, and reason's precipice and loom. To give birth to a shining star. The tharsis rise, the reddening sky, linear volcano, linear time. Darling, the rhymes that rhyme, rhyme in my heart. The plateau can be a form of purgatory, so guide me. The central image is of the tarantula nebula perpendicular to the sky, the heaven of moss, the heaven of mind silica, the hell of electricity fired between neurons, battleground of my electric heart, halos heaped up, the turtles that swim in the muddy galaxy of our soul. One must have a bit of chaos in them, writes Nietzsche. Does he stroke himself and sigh? Amygdala, quasar, supersonic pulse, sonar of the void, come back to us. Show us where to find the things, the lost wrench, the data rich, the geometries stacked and rolled up like tires in the night. Like trajectories, we, sightless, go. Point our telescope up. Tell me again how sad you are, old man, still perpendicular to this particular earth, green thing, heavenless, rhythmic movement of all the engines on earth as 5 o'clock moves across the surface of the globe like the first rays of morning, while overhead galaxies pass each other like ships in the night, a mucus of stars exchanged between them, coincidental orbit. A sparrow flaps its wings in Calcutta. In the Omega Centauri globular cluster, a graph is born. It gives itself as proof. The canyons of avenues deepen, oxidize. Space creates more space in our engulfing heart of space. Saliva, galactic jumping spider, crown of eyes, neutrino of sorrow, endless erosion rising up. Come to me, you vast metropolis, tadpoles of joy, flock of rotating time. I'm going to skip that. From Spokes of the Wheel. Thread me through blue water, 1. Thread me through blue water, bluely, needle through the blue eye of the blue river, wholly lost. Each thought a rock, each new day a smooth, hard stone. Moments of repetition speak to me of joy, of small things, each in its place, where joy, small thing, placed, what need, spoke into the listening mouth of night, night who loves us, folds us in, sweep the floor again, make an egg and one for you. Moments of repetition speak to me of joy. 2. Blue stone in blue water, thread it, throw it, wide arc and swallowed up. Speak to me about grace and I will tell you, let there be grace in the air between us. A ceremony enacts a change. A ceremony signifies a change, but we have to supply the meaning. Thus, you are a child, pouring nothing but air into invisible cups. Thus we have imagined the world, marriage. What the lemon says. The lemon says to me, it is not my grief that infects you, it is your own. As my shape is my own, my bright inward beam for myself only, for other things that you can never know. Reason blesses me, for you it is a curse. You lovers serrated with your own grief, know this. The bitterness will not yield yourselves a sweeter fruit. You don't know how to do that yet, to turn it tender, rend it light. It acidifies in its own self's sake inside you, like each and every single thing. You don't know yet how to hold it. Okay, I say, whatever. Still, here I am, gathering up a palm full of lemon blossoms for a man in winter. Vows. I will say, cumulonimbus at the altar. I will say, eviscerate the shepherd star, cultivate a thicker root, and turn us loose then. What is freedom to a tree? Here I will choose stupidity, an originary relation. Grain for the silos there, corn for the remainder. Some go down into the metabolism of life, some get taken over as remainder. What have we to give them as life, becoming altar, mutable, momentary, strange? There is corn in the garden, tall, golden and strange. There is lineage and myth and love if you can figure it, its fleeting tassels, its rasping thirst, its glowing abject grain. Is this become a ring? I tell myself, do not falter. Be as a man who tends his flock of clouds in this time or any other, alone in conversation with the things. If not alone, then who will be the guests at this, my wedding? The left hand of brightness, the work of it. If you can pull off the complex geometries with those small muscles with which you lever open the world, invert the current's flow from the once singular, the loved body in space, its durability, pull that now huge emptiness through the needle eye of an hourglass sky into a new everywhere, to invert that sphere, that trapezoid flung somehow outward, upward, into this cross-eyed commandment as you command it, suspended between held breath and parallax. If you can do this spatial transformation, rearrange the relations of the atoms of the world itself, the world you love together, standing next to each other in the world's gaze, then you can hold it all around you, breathing. But this takes all that muscled neural work, holding open the shining circumference where grief is love. A non-extant location is coeval with everywhere. I am sitting in the gold-green sunlight inside your eyes.
Cody, thank you so much. Nick, Roberto, and to all of you here and out there. I hope you stick around, enjoy the good company, have a great evening, and see you later tonight, but also in the new year. Okay, bye.